opportunity to ask questions. And it's funny because when I was thinking of it, actually when later on you go to lunch, you can go past the work of Tobias. It's the big black box. And when you go in there, you're actually interfering with the machine, but not knowing it, what you actually do to it. So it's like you interfere in the machine and it has like a consequences. And in your case, Stelarc, it's like the opposite. A machine, you let machinery and technology interfere in you, actually. Right?
Yes.
And I was thinking, it's two ways of actually, well...
Yeah. I mean, the other way of looking at it, and what prompted me to think about listening to your presentation as well, Tobias, is this idea of object-oriented ontology.
Yeah.
You know, where things now, not just simply, inanimate objects. There's embedded circuitry. There's communication between other smart things, and the body is not premised in any way. All of these objects, things, algorithms, bodies, in a sense, interact as equal components. So what object-oriented ontology does is provide a kind of flattened ontology where the human is only one component of the system. Yeah. So in this case, it's not, in my installation, it's not really the issue of who's in control, nor is it an issue of sort of hybrid human-machine systems, but rather, the new sensibilities that can be generated by considering all objects, bodies included, equally. Yeah. And of course that comes from also actor network theory, where social systems are constructed not simply by agents that are human, but by non-human agents, meaning instruments, machines, and so on. So that's the thing that really prompted me to...
I think in your case it does have consequences on your human-to-human relationship, because if you actually have, like, your ear is connected while you're laughing.
It's what I normally do.
It's like the basic state of mind. That's like really cool. You don't have a chip brought in that brought you happiness yet.
I prefer a hair transplant than a chip implant.
But with your ear, when it's actually capable, when it's wired and connected to internet, it could pick up all stuff. I can imagine that people around you, it affects your relation with other humans, because if I talk to you, to who else am I talking? What's happening there?
Well, I think this is really happening all the time. I mean,
apart from your ear, like everywhere,
well, as
all the
Tobias
time.
said, smartphones, our wireless media, they do as much surveillance as transmissions for us.
That's true, but when we are having sex, at least we think in the bedroom, there's 2 or 3 or whatever, how many people you want to do it with, but of us. But in your case, when I would sleep with you, there's this other ear connected to, there is a difference there.
Yeah, but I think it's just this idea of alternate anatomical architectures. Yeah. So we've evolved with 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, but can we sort of interrogate, a bodily architecture that can be structured differently, can have additional capabilities? I mean, we're wonderfully complex entities, but we're fatally flawed. The very concept of living guarantees our death. Yeah. Every time we breathe, we're breathing oxygen, which produces more radicals that will ultimately mutate our DNA, and so our muscles fatigue, our joints wear out, and so on.
And you're not happy with the architecture of your body, that's to say.
Well, we live perfectly healthy lives until about the age of 70. Then we quickly deteriorate and die. Now that's the problem if you're already 70.
And that's something you really don't want, to die. You would prefer to stay alive.
Oh, I think this is all relative. I mean, I don't really have any transhumanist inclinations, but you know, your lifespan is a somewhat arbitrary lifespan.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes 50 years to wake up to yourself and to gain a little bit of knowledge in the world, and then you
You're
don't
not there
last
yet,
much
Tobias.
longer. So,
I'll be back in 20 years.
See you in 20 years when we talk later. But can you relate to this, actually?
In a way, I mean, to go back to the object-orientated ontology thing, that's not a theory that's without problems, but it's important. I think it's a real sea change in the way that humans are realizing they are not the primacy in the universe, that actually there are other things. Whether you believe the machines have their own intentionality is what's key over whether they really do or not. Like, there's no kind of underlying thing here. I often have this debate with clients and students and all sorts of people where it's like, if a 5-year-old child believes that Siri is real, it is real. And you have to go from that assumption and construct the world on that assumption, which then leads you into the interesting point of mixed realities and people's version of what's real and fake, and as we're seeing with, quite a prosaic level with post-truth and fake news and all that stuff, that's part of it, but also understanding that the machine's ability to read and then reconstruct reality is having a drastic effect on what we think reality is.
Yeah.
And everything from rendering to statistical modeling to machine learning are all parts of this process of them, where before perhaps they spent the last 50 years learning and gathering, we're now seeing them sort of reforming the world in the image of the model they've built, which is quite alarming.
And I think that machine systems do expose the problematics of human intentionality and human agency. In other words, depending on how you frame the world, within a simple frame, I can assert that I choose to do something. On the other hand, in a more complex interactive system, who's in control is meaningless. Intentionality might be distributed within the system of interactive bodies, objects, and other machine systems. So I think it's convenient to believe that you're an individual body with its own agency and intentionality, and our language encourages this. For example, I am an artist, I come to Eindhoven, I give a presentation, but the I only indicates this body. It doesn't indicate some intrinsic essence that is called mind or self or whatever. This is a problem of language and how we speak about things. So that's interesting about robotics and machine systems. They expose what it means to be alive, what minimum vocabulary of movements, seeing those robots topple over and so on, what small vocabulary of behavior will generate a sense of aliveness. And if a humanoid robot, like the David Hansen Diego robot, 32 embedded micromotors in the flexible skin, that generates an array of facial expressions that are very convincing. And if that robot smiles and initiates a smile in me, then that exchange of empathy can occur. And it's, I think, meaningless to say, what's real and what's not.
No, but also about the opportunities. That's what we're also talking about. So if you give a presentation here, we only see like a percentage, maybe not even that, of who you are, your whole mind and the whole essence of who you are. Whereas with technology and the way the communication is and with that everything is connected, you can give much more information. Straight away, I could have like way more percentage of who you actually are.
Yeah. But I'm really into protocols at the moment as well, which are like, we're talking about language, but that's surrounded by rules about what language is and what can be said by who, where, in what context, and so on and so forth. And actually, in a really fascinating way, it's protocols between the interactions between humans and machines, humans and humans, machines and machines, where I think the real power is. I think that's where the kind of stop levers are on what kind of information can be exchanged, in which directions, for how long, by who, when, and so on and so forth. And those protocols are everything from social contracts and politeness and etiquette down to like DNS and TCP/IP on the internet. You know, and those really start to structure then how we make models of the world and the universe.
I also said there's opportunity for you to ask questions. Please raise your hand, and then one of our people is coming to you. There's a question here. Yes.
I have a question to Stelarc. In what way does the experience doing those kind of performances, like you're going to do here Saturday, in which you give off your senses and your body to outside people or systems, in what way is there a difference between normal functioning, like just having your senses now, and your personal experience? In what way does it differ? Because you have some experience that most of us don't, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to sort of authentically report sort of subjective experiences. But the idea of in a sense, disconnecting your sensory experience from the proximal, you know, locality where you're situated, and only using your own eyes and ears, that sort of interests me to kind of, I mean, I think in the future you'll be able to log into anybody anywhere and experience, you know, their senses through electronic mediation. So it's, I guess at the end of, say, the 5 hours of performing, when you remove the headset, when you take off the sound-cancelling earphones and you remove your arm from the exoskeleton, yeah, in a sense, the world kind of collapses back into a coherent and local space that you inhabit. So it's really like the performance are really about performing in a posture of indifference, you know, allowing things to happen. You structure the system, certainly, then you switch it on, and then you allow it to unfold in its own time with its own rhythm. And what's interesting as an artwork is always the slippage that occurs between what's intended and the actual outcome. And doing it for an extended period of time means that you have a chance to. I mean, the problem is actually keeping your balance. You know, because you're not seeing locally. You're not, so you know, your body doesn't have the proximal sensing that allows it to maintain its balance. And then every now and again, the exoskeleton arm is programmed. So half the problem is keeping your balance, and that's the difficulty in that performance, I think.
And a mental thing, because you let go, you know, let go of controlling it.
Yeah, but you know, the word control for me is no longer an important word. As I mentioned before, in any complex interactive system, which is actually the world, but with but more locally with our technologies, it's meaningless to assert human
that is true, but the funny thing is that on one hand, Kevin Kelly says in his book, it's also about decentralizing. Where even if we can decentralize money, we can decentralize everything. Actually, with the Bitcoin, and because of the blockchain system, we actually can. So there's no control needed in that way. On the other hand, most people have a fear when it comes to technology and humans, is about control. Who's in control? Am I going to be hacked? Am I going to be... So there's like a weird thing going on there as well.
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, if you're going to have electronic devices inserted into your body, you're going to be hacked. But
you don't fear that.
Well, I don't think it's a matter. I think it's more a manner. I mean, with every Paul Virilio says that with every new technology, there's a new kind of accident. Okay, that's the kind of negative aspect of it. but new technologies are not simplistically enabling, but are highly destabilizing. Technologies that generate unexpected information and images, in a sense, necessitate us adjusting the paradigms that we operate in, what we consider the world and what we consider a body is and how it functions. Yeah, I think sometimes we sort of think into the future with a kind of rear vision mirror mentality. I mean, I think that's maybe a McLuhan-esque thing. But one of the most beautiful quotes from McLuhan that I remember is that technology is the external organs of the body. so you know, as an evolutionary body, we're a soft body. We have soft internal organs, but this is inadequate for the body to perform appropriately in a technological terrain, and so we engineer additional organs, additional devices that we attach or insert into us.
I think that the more important word than control is exploit, because that has so many connotations. You know, capitalistic systems are about exploiting materials for profit. We know that through that technological systems use exploits as workarounds to break the systems. We know that individuals will try and exploit others for their own profit. So exploit doesn't necessarily mean the same as control, but it's the way that any system is used in a sophisticated way, in the kind of classical sense of sophisticated, in order for the gain of one party over another. And as you pointed out, as soon as you put your arm on the internet, someone was fucking about with you, because they were like, well, I'm going to exploit that, you know. Yeah. And I think that's, you know, it's not necessarily about having control for control's sake. It's about exploiting to demonstrate the system or to find the ways around the system.
But then another thing is that you you are happy to extend all your senses as well. But on the other hand, like this afternoon, we have Stelarc Tobias. She will tell something about smell. Yeah. We have names for colors. We don't have names for smell. Actually, in the Western world, we say, "Oh, that stinks," or "It doesn't stink." That's it. So how about training what we actually have, these weird senses that we have, and actually do something with that instead of, you know, extending them without even having proper knowledge of what our senses are actually about and what they are available or are capable of?
Yeah. Well, of course, one of the problems about smells is that the human body's physiology isn't as good as other living creatures like dogs. And there's a reason why we...
I hear like a sort of self-hate all the time in yourself.
But there's a reason why we're such a visually based and then orally based society. Because for us, physiologically, smell is not an easy thing to do, and to do with the sensitivity, for example, that another living thing might experience the world with. So there are reasons why smell is not seen as an important
yeah, but that it's difficult. I mean, what you're doing is also kind of difficult, isn't it? I mean, that shouldn't be a reason not to do something, especially not here on the conference for the curious. Is there any more questions? Yes, here or wherever. Just stick up your arm and then, yeah, just have one of the people.
This might be oversimplification, this question, and it's actually to both of you. But if we're talking about technology breaking the boundaries between different people and different systems, do you think, on the whole, that's going to lead to greater empathy? As Chris Milk was talking about VR as an empathy machine, do you think that this leads to greater empathy or to greater objectification of other humans?
I have no idea. Literally no. I mean, I don't even know if empathy is the right word necessarily. So how does greater technologies breaking through systems lead to empathy with other humans? Is that kind of the crux of the question?
No, the question is more, do you think, I'm asking you for speculation, of course.
Okay.
So it's not like, I'm asking you to speculate on whether you think that this breaking through to each other, so that, you know, you have the examples of some other people controlling your bodies, you're talking about protocols. Do you think that on the whole this leads to people understanding each other better, becoming more empathetic with each other, let's say, societal improvement, or do you think that it's more likely to lead to people using each other more readily and easily, and an objectification, if you like, of each other?
I would say both simultaneously. all these systems allow for greater modeling of human behaviors, right? Humans are messy and chaotic and don't fit into models well. And we need models for complicated systems to function properly. So in the sense there will be greater empathy, it's probably because we'll be more legible. Our social profiles will give us more information that connects us with people that we are supposed to be connected to, which leads to greater empathy. But at the same time, that turns us into objects in a data sheet, which are easier to control. So I would say, why not both simultaneously, I would guess.
Yeah, in that way, I mean, if you are an empathic person, or you're willing to train that, or you want that, that's something intrinsically, you know. So that's, but every individual is different in that, and that will probably stay. So what the outcome is, I think, is like more form. I'm not sure, but I think that's like something in the core of humans and of an individual thing.
The other big research area after artificial intelligence is artificial empathy. Right, the kind of tech design guys are crazy about this idea that you don't need intelligent systems, you need empathetic systems that can understand.
But really,
what is it? Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's just a nice buzzword. But the point is, it's seen as like the next stage in kind of building relationships between humans. Isn't on like linguistic programming, which would be a form of a protocol for intelligence, but more on like feeling and speed and pace and how information is revealed, which is then a form of empathy. In theory,
it's really about developing more complex systems that generate more subtle behaviours, and what we call, emotional responses are an aspect of how we behave in the world and how we interact with other people. So as long as we don't sort of see emotions and empathy as a kind of nostalgia for the human, because I think we have to consider alternate sorts of embodiments and hybrid human-machine systems. As long as empathy and emotion is not this kind of tag for human nostalgia, then that's fine for me. Anything that generates more subtle interaction between people and machines and so on, whether it's called empathy or just complex and more subtle behaviour, that's fine.
That's fine. There was a question somewhere, over there.
Yes, I have a question, or I want to hear your thoughts on a certain topic. So like you were saying before, that people over the internet could maybe possibly in the future see through other bodies, and Tobias, you were talking about the black box and protocols, and I was very curious to hear your thoughts about understanding the body as a medium. What are the qualities of a body to be able to mediate something?
I think you'd be best to lead that.
Well, I haven't heard a lot of qualities about the body yet.
Yeah. Well, of course, bodies are embedded in social systems which consist of cultural conditioning, political persuasions. All of these things are part of what constitutes human social existence. And our instruments and our technologies sometimes enable, sometimes expose the problematics of these interactions. So that's kind of how I see it, as this sort of fluid relationship. And I really don't see the body as in the kind of psycho kind of ego-driven sense. I see the body as one complex interactive system with other bodies and other instruments. And as Tobias alluded to before, technologies now can sense beyond the small electromagnetic spectrum that we can observe subjectively. But I think incorporating technology into the body, I think will alter our kind of subjective idea about machines and instruments and so on. I mean, I think that in the future, perhaps, in 2,000 years' time, we might look exactly the same as we do now. The difference might be, though, that we are colonized by nanomachines, nanosensors. In other words, all technology in the future might be invisible because they're inside the body. The body becomes the host for the technological machinery that it's engineered, initially externally, but now imploding back into the body itself. So I think the subjective experience of instrumentation will be different when technology becomes invisible in that sense.
I think for most people, we're already there. I mean, your body is a kind of semi-conquered site of digital capitalism is already halfway there. In a lot of countries, health insurance is directly tied to things like your heart rate and your eating habits. You can get apps and services, Fitbits and so on and so forth that make sure that you're healthy enough to be a functioning member of society and a worker that's justified to meet all these levies to climb to the top. I've even got an app to try and make sure that I get like 7 hours sleep a night. The body is already a site of technological mediation. I think it probably has been longer than anything else in the world. But it's being systemized, like everything else, trying to make it systemized and legible, to try and make it, to flatten the ontology of the body and make it into data that can be then read and assessed on those criteria, rather than the embodied, personal, experiential sense of what the body is. So I think we're already there, and I think that the speed at which that's happened is alarming. I think some of the outputs of that are things like, those nutrient drinks that are like everything you need chemically, but with none of the experiential aspect of eating food at all, because now the body is a machine.
Michael Jackson already did that.
Did he?
Yeah, with his astronaut pills.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. But yeah, so it's already a thing, and so the body is already read as a machine, and it's already giving out data like a machine. I think in most people in this room's case, certainly in the developed world, we're giving away information about our body and its movements all the time. Your phone, the point I made about the ultrasonic sensor being on is really important. Your phone is constantly picking up your footsteps and distance from other things. Amazon's Alexa is well known for doing this. It can pretty accurately model what's in a room and how big the room is just from the ultrasound. Your body is already being machine read and is made machine legible, and then you're given stuff back on those terms.
Yeah. And the funny thing is about you and your body maybe looks the same. I thought you would be a person that it reminded me of this story of Roald Dahl, where somebody dies and the brain can be captured, and then with an eye, and then his wife starts smoking and looking at the eye. There's nothing he can do. He can just, see the world. And I thought you might have the option that we only have your mind left and not your body. Would you do that?
Well, I've only got half a brain to begin with, so...
Well, we can optimize that.
No, but I think, in this sort of increasingly video, virtual, and vicarious world, we shouldn't sort of be seduced by this trope of dematerialization or disembodiment. Yeah. We're increasingly more and more massively embodied. If you see the body connected with all its computational systems and other machines and so on. I think some of the most interesting things are happening within the body modification community. Split tongues, split penises, screws into their skulls, all kinds of physical body modification that at least indicates a desire to experiment in a very real sense. So I'm just kind of skeptical about this sort of trope of increasing, dematerialization.
But both of those things are the body as a performance media, whether it's like an aesthetic change or like constantly keeping fit and healthy by whatever standards they are. Yeah. It's all about using it as a vessel for performing a role, whether it's an aesthetic experimentation or like being the perfect worker or member of society. And ultimately, that's kind of where we're in now. It's something where it's like your body is something that's presented outwards, and the choices you make there. I'm not qualified to speak about this. I'm going to shut up.
No, and the only thing I can think of now is a split penis. So that's, I don't know if that's it's like sexual schizophrenia kind of. Anyways, if you have any more questions, well, you're going to be performing in the weekend,
Yes.
and your work is over there, actually going to lunch. So and they're here if you have any other questions. For now, thank you so much, Tobias
Thank you.
Revell and
Thank you.
Stelarc. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
No worries.